In the grand theater of history, few events have left a mark as indelible as the medieval plague, commonly known as the Black Death. Imagine a world intricately woven with human lives, where families gathered, trade prospered, and communities flourished. Now, picture that very same world plunged into unimaginable chaos, a darkness sweeping through the streets, erasing lives faster than the blink of an eye. How did such a catastrophic plague reshape not just a continent but the very path of history itself? As we delve into this narrative, take a moment to consider not the sheer horror of the disease, but the hidden transformations it ignited across society, economy, and culture. Stick around, for in the next few minutes, we'll uncover layers of history, revealing secrets about the past that often remain buried beneath the surface. You might be wondering, can a tragedy also be a catalyst for progress? The answer is a resounding yes, and it starts right here in the 14th century. Picture this: in the early 1340s, as whispers of a strange, deadly disease began to circulate from the east, few could have anticipated the upheaval heading towards Europe. Rat-infested ships stormed into bustling ports, carrying with them not just goods but a contagion that would soon wipe out a staggering 1/3 of Europe's population. It's eerie to think that a microbe, invisible to the naked eye, could alter the fate of nations. But as we dig deeper, we'll see that these dark days were not just an endpoint, they were a prologue to a new era. The initial wave of the plague struck in 1347, and by 1351, it had killed roughly 25 million people. This catastrophic toll left survivors grappling with existential questions. What did it mean to live in a world where so many innocent lives were snuffed out without reason? For many, faith in religious and societal structures began to wane. And therein lies our first powerful insight: calamity often births introspection and change. Throughout history, societies facing immense crises tend to redefine themselves, and the Black Death was no exception. Surprised by how deeply a disease could undermine the very fabric of medieval society? Keep watching, because the waves of change reach far wider than mere population decline. As the death toll rose, labor became scarce, and something remarkable began to evolve. The medieval economy, a feudal system grounded in servitude and inequality, started to shift. With fewer peasants available to till the land, those who survived found themselves with newfound leverage. It was during this tumultuous period that wages began to rise, and the seeds of a rudimentary economic democracy were sown. Picture a serf, once bound by obligations, suddenly seeing a glimmer of opportunity. What happens when the power dynamics shift? The feudal lords, once untouchable, realized they could no longer command workers as they had before. Do you see what's brewing here? The rise in wages and the decline of serfdom. If you think this was just an isolated reaction to the plague, think again. This was the beginning of a significant social transformation that would escalate through the centuries, ultimately leading to the Renaissance and the dawn of modernity. The religious landscape was profoundly disturbed as well. Think about it: the plague struck indiscriminately, taking the lives of clergy and lay people alike. In trying to make sense of their suffering, people began to question the Church's authority and their faith itself. Some sought answers in traditional religious practices, while others turned to radical sects or heretical thoughts that promised new paths to salvation. This questioning led to significant shifts in theological discourse, culminating in a nation seeking more than what the Church offered. Have you ever wondered how movements like the Reformation found fertile ground in this context? You're on the brink of an incredible revelation. At that moment in history, disillusionment with the Church really took root, sowing seeds that would grow into profound societal shifts in the decades and centuries that followed. The angst felt during the plague years didn't immediately result in formal religious reform, but ultimately laid the groundwork for monumental changes that questioned everything: faith, power, and societal norms. But there's more to uncover about the legacy of the plague, a silver lining that isn't always acknowledged. Culturally, as Europe faced its mortality head-on, a profound shift in artistic expression emerged. The horrors of the plague stirred a new wave of art and literature, profoundly marked by themes of death and mortality. Think of the dark yet beautiful memento mori pieces that remind viewers of their fleeting existence. This wasn't just an outpouring of grief, it was a turning point in creative expression, encouraging artists and thinkers to delve deeply into what it meant to be human. And here's an unexpected twist: the same fear and existential dread that permeated society also fostered innovation and inquiry. The stories, philosophies, and art that arose during and after the plague began to challenge the conventions of the past. In a society aching to express its pain and despair, new ideas flourished, stimulating curiosity and creativity that would eventually ignite the Renaissance. What comes next will leave you speechless. There's a direct line from the Black Death to the rapid advancements of science we experienced in the following centuries. With fewer people to manage, a scarcity of labor forced society to look for innovative agricultural practices and new technologies. The demand for efficiency propelled advancements in fields like engineering and agriculture, paving the way for the agricultural revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries and ultimately shaping the landscape of modern science. As we journey further into this discussion, consider the ways the medieval plague did not simply settle into the annals of history like dust gathering in an old book. Instead, it acted as a relentless sculptor, chiseling away at the rigid structures of medieval life and giving rise to a new and more flexible societal framework. You might be wondering how such a cataclysm could harbor seeds of progress. But history shows that from ashes often rise the most transformative achievements. Let's zoom in on the dynamics of trade as well. The demographic shifts spurred by the plague created a vacuum in labor markets, leading to a chain reaction that transformed economic systems. With fewer bodies to fill jobs, the remaining workers were no longer bound to the same limitations. Instead, we find merchants and common folk demanding fair wages and conditions, turning the wheels of commerce and trade in unanticipated directions. This demand for labor ignited the early flames of capitalism, foreshadowing an economic landscape vastly different from the feudal system that once defined Europe. Fascinating, isn't it? The plague catalyzed an awakening of the common people, bringing about socio-economic changes that echoed through the centuries and laid the groundwork for what we now conceptualize as a market economy. Now, you might think we've covered all angles of the historical impact of the plague, but we're just warming up. One intrinsic yet often overlooked aspect of this narrative lies in the realms of medicine and public health. This brutal episode forced Europe to confront its understanding of disease. Previously steeped in superstition and mysticism, the field of medicine began to evolve as a result of the crude and devastating experiences surrounding the plague. Consider the repercussions: a relentless push towards a more systematic approach to healthcare. While medieval medicine had largely relied on the humoral philosophical approach, the evident failure to combat the plague through old methods led scientists to seek new frameworks for understanding disease. The questioning of established health practices marked a slow but inevitable shift towards empirical observation and, eventually, scientific inquiry. Are you intrigued by how these early movements paved the way for groundbreaking discoveries in the field of medicine? Stay tuned, because what follows next will illustrate how this newfound curiosity blossomed into revolutionary advancements. As we continue to unravel the layers of how the medieval plague changed history, we must confront the globalization aspect of the event. It's often said that the plague made the world smaller, as trade routes and migration patterns shifted. The interconnectedness of this experience stretched across continents, leaving its mark not only on Europe but also affecting Asia and beyond. The very tapestry of human experience became more intertwined. As people moved, ideas flowed along the trade routes, and the grief and hardship of the plague forged a narrative that transcended borders. This became a lesson in resilience and adaptability, a lesson that reverberates globally to this day. But hang on, at this moment, as we cover the implications of interconnectedness, consider how lessons learned during times of crisis can linger and inform future generations. The medieval plague was not just an event, It was an educational chapter in the annals of human experience, one that sowed the seeds for collaboration and empathy to shape international relations in the centuries that followed. With all of this in mind, let's pause at this transition point. We've unearthed many allies in the story of the medieval plague and its far-reaching consequences, revealing how calamity can catalyze innovation and change, both socially and economically. The tale continues to evolve beyond the immediate suffering as we analyze the effects of this event on governance, culture, and global connectivity. In our next part, we will delve deeper into the specifics of those transformations, exploring how they laid the groundwork for the metamorphoses that ushered in the modern world. Stay with us as we piece together the vast puzzle of history, a narrative filled with twists and unexpected turns, illuminating just how profoundly the Black Death altered the course of human civilization. As we dive deeper into the narrative, we must examine the political ramifications of the Black Death, which did more than alter social norms and economic structures. It laid the foundation for a new approach to governance. The catastrophic loss of life led to a crisis of authority across Europe, prompting re-evaluations of power dynamics. Kings and nobles, once viewed as divinely ordained leaders, found their legitimacy challenged. With their own subjects decimated by the plague, these rulers faced the eerie reality that their power was contingent upon the support of a population that had dwindled. In the vacuum created by this loss, local governance structures began to emerge. Towns and cities, faced with the urgent need to organize for survival, gradually developed more autonomous systems of leadership. This trend towards local governance was compounded by the newfound agency of common folk who, equipped with skills and a bargaining chip in the form of labor, began demanding representation and rights. The rise of urban centers led to a more pronounced civic identity among their inhabitants, setting the stage for the political upheavals that would follow in the late medieval and early modern periods, including the English Civil War and the eventual birth of modern democratic states. Isn't it remarkable how a pandemic could catalyze a restructuring of power? The resulting movements championed voices of the less privileged, giving rise to debates about rights and governance that would resonate for centuries to come. Ideas once limited to the intellectual elite suddenly became part of public discourse. Emerging concepts of citizenship and rights would later evolve into the political ideologies that emerged during the Age of Enlightenment. Next, let's explore the transformational impact on education and intellectual pursuits. With the decay of the feudal system and the shifting dynamics in governance, the path for knowledge began to change, leading to the enrichment of learning spaces such as universities. The plague had decimated the population of university scholars, driving institutions to rethink their educational models. The desperate need for informed leaders and professionals in the wake of societal upheaval fostered an environment where learning was not merely for the elite but also for those eager to contribute to the rebuilding of society. The subsequent influx of learners to universities during the Renaissance period witnessed the growth of secular thought. Scholars began to focus on humanism, which sought to explore human experience and encourage critical thinking, setting the stage for the development of modern science and philosophy. As the philosophical landscape evolved, empirical observation, once overshadowed by dogma, was embraced as the bedrock of knowledge. This intellectual awakening heralded advancements across various disciplines, from literature to the sciences, driving humanity toward rationalism and the scientific method. Speaking of scientific advancements, let's highlight how the lessons learned from the Black Death gradually blossomed into more systematic public health initiatives. The scale of the disease was shocking, but it also illustrated the need for organized responses to health crises. Communities began to formulate rudimentary health regulations. Measures like quarantines and sanitation practices became essential tools in managing public health. As we fast forward through the centuries, we see how these early responses seeded the roots of modern public health systems. Epidemiological breakthroughs, driven by the study of contagion, began to reshape human understanding of disease transmission and prevention. the importance of hygiene was gradually recognized, culminating in advances that would one day lead to the birth of bacteriology in the 19th century and the development of vaccines. Yet the impact of the Black Death extended beyond the boundaries of Europe. The pandemic acted as a historical touchpoint that accelerated globalization. Trade routes that crisscrossed Europe and Asia experienced stringent revisions as nations responded to new challenges. The fallout of the plague meant that economic networks needed to adapt, thereby fostering early globalization efforts that brought distant cultures closer together. As curiosity bloomed during the Renaissance, explorations of new territories began to intersect with the interconnected trade systems evolving as a result of the plague. European powers sent explorers in search of new trade routes, driven by both desire for goods and an insatiable hunger for knowledge. The Age of Exploration, which followed the Black Death, was a direct consequence of the interdependencies and aspirations forged in those grim years. As nations sought to reclaim and rebuild, the urge to expand borders led to voyages that transformed global consciousness. Let's shift our attention back to culture, particularly in terms of literature, philosophy, and the arts. The themes of mortality woven into the fabric of post-plague creative expression unleashed powerful narratives that continue to resonate with us today. Think about the literature of the time. Works by authors like Geoffrey Chaucer capture the essence of human experience, reflecting on joy and suffering in stark contrast. The themes prevalent in literary output began to embrace examinations of the human condition that transcended moralistic tales. Emerging from the shadows of despair came the magnificence of the Renaissance, driven in part by this artistic awakening. Artists, writers, and thinkers tackled questions of existence and individuality, their works imbued with a renewed sense of humanity and inquiry. The gradual emergence of portraiture and representations of the natural world reflects a burgeoning appetite to understand and celebrate the complexities of life. We also must acknowledge the philosophical shifts rooted in the stirrings of humanism. Thinkers began to reflect on man's place within the universe, seeking to question not only the divine but also humanity's capabilities and dreams. The exploration of self, choice, and morality flourished in this era, redefining societal values and perceptions. At this intersection of art, philosophy, and science, something very profound took shape, a reorientation of the human experience that emphasized rational thought, empirical evidence, and individual agency. What once shrank in the face of despair expanded into a renaissance of human creativity and intellect. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration, let's reflect on the interconnectedness of these transformative forces. The Black Death was not merely a moment of indiscriminate devastation, it catalyzed profound societal shifts that would ripple through time, carving out pathways for modern institutions and frameworks that govern our lives today. In this intricate tapestry of history, the threads of crisis, adaptation, and innovation neatly intertwine to reveal a larger narrative about human resilience. It is a tale that teaches us crucial lessons about our capacity for growth amid turmoil. The calamities faced by communities transform those same communities, laying a rich foundation for future generations to build upon. So as we stand at the threshold of the modern age, let's not forget the legacy of the Black Death. It whispered through the corridors of time, shaping minds, systems, and cultures in ways that reverberate today. The continuation of the human journey is a testament to the victories shared across centuries, demonstrating how even the darkest moments can ignite the brightest innovations. In contemplating this extraordinary chapter in history, we can glean insights that resonate with our current experiences. As we navigate new challenges today, be they health crises, social upheaval, or environmental concerns, the echoes of the past remind us of our resilience and adaptability. History teaches that, like the seasons, we rise and fall, and with each cycle, we seek pathways toward renewal. In closing, the legacy of the Black Death exemplifies an inherent truth: from catastrophe can emerge creativity, inquiry, and a unified humanity. Let us carry this wisdom forward as we craft our own stories, shaping the world for generations to come, forever marked by the lessons of history's most transformative events.